Hi Team We Run, it's Coach Alexa here, coach for Reading, South Oxfordshire and online. Following up on my last video about hay fever, I thought I'd touch on something else that goes on throughout the year but certainly seems to be a little bit more noticeable when we have extended periods of dry weather that's going to impact our breathing, how we feel on the run, etc. And that is pollution levels. So as a little bit of an example, I live on the outskirts of Reading, right at the bottom of the Chilterns, which is lovely. So out the back of my house is lovely woodland like this, and it's the Chiltern Hills. But if I go out the front of my house, it's a gravel basin Thames Valley floodplain. And I guess the downside of that gravel basin Thames Valley floodplain, it's a little bit of a kind of large sort of dip in the land, and it's where pollution just seems to sit and congregate. And it's not helped by the fact that I'm quite near Reading, which is a traffic nightmare, and the M4, which goes up the Thames Valley. So there's lots of sources of pollution as well as this kind of basin effect. So as an example, over the last couple of weeks when we've had drier weather, particularly when it's been quite still days, those kind of still muggy days, the pollution level starts to creep up around me. We had a massive thunderstorm this morning, and that literally, in some senses, washes a lot of the pollution out of the air and into our waterways. Brilliant. But it's better for breathing. So the pollution levels are actually quite low here for the next sort of 2 or 3 days, but then I noticed them towards the end of this week building back up again into the weekend. And this will all be impacted by things like rainfall. It will be impacted by how much wind we have just kind of blowing that air out of this little basin that we've got here locally. So, you know, there's lots of different factors at play, as well as the sort of sources of pollution themselves. So when I used to live in central Reading, there was an environmental group that put up a few pollution monitors at key junctions in Reading, and alarmingly hitting the recommended levels for a year's worth of pollution within about 3 weeks, which is always good to know. But it was useful to just have their websites on tap. So, you know, if you had a bit of a suspicion, you know, through your breathing or just the way the air sort of smelled or looked that the pollution levels were high, you could pick a different route away from the centre of town. The BBC weather app, for example, has a little pollution thing. So it has UV, it has pollen levels, and it also has pollution level little warning triangles when any of them go above a low level. So that's quite useful as well. It will have a bit of an impact on our running, particularly if you're asthmatic or recovering from any form of illness, you know, colds, flu, COVID, that impact the lungs and make them a little bit more sensitive to it. It might give you hay fever like symptoms, and it's not great for us in the long term. Like all of these things where we try and we sort of find out as we go, don't we, about the long-term effects of breathing in high pollution levels, because our lungs are pretty sensitive and highly tuned things. So it's definitely worth just looking out for and bearing in mind. As I say, depending on the part of the world you live in, you know, geographically and also in a quite built up area of the southeast of England, you know, these things impact me a little bit more maybe than others. Certainly if you're in a large city, it's something worth keeping a little bit of an eye out for. Happy running.